Hello, everyone can hear me? Good, good, good. Hi guys, welcome to our panel discussion on have we hit peak sync? Not yet. Just like to thank Shane, Vass, and everyone at the Sound Diplomacy and everyone involved at BIME 2014 for having us. It's been really, really great so far and looking forward to the rest of it. And thanks for coming along today. Just straight off the bat, it'd be really interesting to find out a bit more about the audience here today. So we could have just a little bit of audience participation and hands up. How many artist management people are here? Anyone artist management? Okay, any artists themselves here? Okay, cool. Any labels? Okay, and there's general other music industry types? Yep, okay, good. Well, that's good to know. Okay, we'll just introduce the rest of the panelists now. My name's Roscoe Williamson. I'm a producer at MassiveMusic in London, and we deal primarily in original composition and sync for music, primarily commercials, TV, digital. But over to the panelists, and I'll just let them all introduce themselves.
Hello. I don't know if this is working. I'm scared. I'm Sarah Giles. I work at Wave Studios for Wave Music, which is the in-house music department at Wave Studios. We're a sound design studio based in Soho in London, and we have 9 studios there, about 10 or 11 engineers, and an office in Amsterdam as well. And so, yeah, so I'm the in-house music supervisor and will help any clients out with any musical needs for the adverts and the films that we work on.
Hi everybody, I'm Laslie. I work for Sony PlayStation in London, in Soho as well. I'm a music supervisor there. I'm one of 5 music supervisors in our team. We license music, we get music composed for games. Yeah, we license and deal with all sorts of music out there.
Hello everyone, my name's Jim. I'm the head of music at BT Sport. BT Sport is a sports TV channel based in London. Me and my team provide music licensing, music reporting and creative support to about 80 to 90 producers all working on different productions for BT Sport.
And I am Caroline Gorman. I am the head of music at Rage Music. We're basically a music production company, and we have 3 studios in Glasgow, in London, and in LA. And we're a team of 6 composers who make bespoke music, like Roscoe mentioned, for advertising, for TV, for films, and just starting for video games as well.
Cool, thanks guys. So we'll get cracking on with the discussion. I think maybe a nice kind of easy place to start, and I think quite a lot of people will be interested in this actually, is just open the question up of where do you source your music when you're looking to sync music to any visual media, whether it's computer games or whether it's broadcast or whether it's commercials. How do you guys go about kind of finding the music that you end up using? Maybe Sarah, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So it completely depends really on what the project is, because there's so many different things that come up, and so I think over the years of working, you tend to build up your relationships with different people and different labels and different artists and that kind of thing. So when the right project comes in, you know the sort of person that you're aiming to speak to, if that makes sense. And it depends on the budgets and that kind of thing when that comes up. So I guess the simple answer would be we'll speak to the labels and the sync departments at each of the labels when a good advert comes in. Mm-hmm. But if it was for something like, I don't know, of a less budget or something like that, we might have to go directly to composers. Mm-hmm.
or maybe management companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Laslie?
Yeah, it's like Sarah said, it depends on the budget. If the budget is not that massive, you can go down the library routes, so you can go and get a track license from a production house or something like that, or get composers. And it also always it can depend on what the marketing person or the producer actually wants to do with the music. Do they want to use it for future references? It could be feasible just to get something composed that we will own, and then we can exploit that track to the max. But yeah, the major thing, the first thing that I will ask, that we'll think about is what is the budget and what do you want to do with the music, and then do I go with a commercial track or do I go compose, and that's where you go to then from there, from my side of things.
Okay, that's good to know. And Jim, is it sort of similar for you, or?
Yeah, we're very fortunate to receive mountains and mountains of music from rights holders, that's to say publishers, record labels, promotion companies. We get music from artists themselves, composers, production music libraries. All comes into us on mailers, on emails and stuff. But we try to, or we're all, me and all the team are music fans first and foremost. So we use the same sources that other music fans would use to find their music. So listen to the radio, read magazines, read blogs, go to gigs, talk to other music fans, buy records in shops, and I generally find that that's a more satisfying way to source music for the productions than just relying on record company mailers.
So you're quite active in terms of...
Absolutely, yeah.
I like that. That sounds interesting because we have a similar view, because we don't, unlike the other guys sitting up here, we don't have a client that comes to us specifically just for a sync. They'd normally come to us as a composer to have something composed. And the only reason we would point them in direction of a sync is when we genuinely think that somebody out there already has a track that would do a really good job. And we have a very small kind of group, like Sarah had said, there's kind of people that you've built up over the years that you connect with, and maybe you've met at gigs, or you just genuinely like what they're doing. And if you can go to a client, well, go to these guys, you know, they've got a great track, and they would really love to be part of this campaign, and it would work for you because they're a cool band, and make that kind of marriage and just stand back from it and go, yeah, great, I've been a matchmaker, I don't make any money from this, and I've essentially talked myself out of a job as a composer, but it's a really good end result, and it's nice when somebody has genuinely said, well, we're actually music fans, and that's how we approach it, rather than the standard, you know, labels only and just running off mailers. That makes me feel kind of like, oh, good, yes. Somebody has the same feeling. Yay.
Oh, would anyone say there are any particular sort of platforms that you utilise for your searches? For example, I know that through Ease we use a lot of Spotify when we're doing searches. Obviously not just relying on Spotify, but it's a great for making playlists quickly. We can share the playlists with our offices, and I don't know. Do you guys use any particular platforms for your music searches, or?
SoundCloud. Love SoundCloud. For us, when we have, you know, our own music or people, bands that we like or composers that we're kind of looking at, when they have a really active, up-to-date SoundCloud, you normally find in that kind of, you know, 7 steps to Kevin Bacon way, you're sitting on SoundCloud, and through this person's track you get put to this person, and through that person you find this person, and they're a bit like them, and the suggestive, if you like these people, go and check these people out. You can, you know, lose an hour of your time, but you've learned lots more people that you're like, oh, great, you know, it's great.
I do agree with the SoundCloud as well. I think it's awesome. Like, and so many unexpected people have SoundCloud that you wouldn't even think. Like NASA this week.
Oh yeah.
Just got a SoundCloud, and it's insane. Everything's like public domain. You can use anything that you want. It's so good. Definitely better check it out.
Yeah. On my side of things, Spotify is normally what we would use, and live streaming like SoundCloud and stuff like. Just sending over a playlist saying, oh, this is what's going on at the moment, and and just playing it loud in the office and stuff like that. And everybody gets to listen to it at the same time.
Therefore, I think, you know, if people want to get their music heard, if they want to get it in the hands of people, you know, who are potentially placing music for media, it makes sense, obviously, to make sure that you're potentially on those platforms, or as visible as possible, I think, really. And it kind of leads on to the question of, like, A&R, and is sync potentially a kind of new model for A&R? Do you think that by exploiting an artist's media to visual communication, can that build the artist's career? Do you necessarily still have to worry about releasing records? Do you necessarily have to worry about touring? Can it just rely on sync? Are we at that point yet, do you think? Or I don't know, what do you guys think?
Well, from our side, the track, let's say I choose a track and I put it on a video. I've got this habit and it's not a well-known artist, or you know, nobody knows of them, I've got this habit going onto YouTube and going and reading the comments. If there's 5 people writing a comment on there saying, I came here because of the music, what is this track's name? I'm like, that's job done.
Yeah, yeah.
That's job done. It shows that that track worked well with that product, and that product is working well with the track.
Absolutely.
And they both complementing each other, so that's a win-win situation for me, so yeah.
I mean, how important do you think sync is as a revenue stream now for artists as compared to, say, touring or releasing records?
I think maybe it's the way it's perceived that if you phone up a band and you say, look, there's a sync opportunity, I've pitched you for this brand, for this advert, for UK TV, or say a US campaign or whatever, they have that kind of, oh my God, excitement, and which is lovely. And you go, yeah, it could be very profitable, or it could be that I'll get a phone call in 10 minutes time and your track's no longer in the running. It's managing their expectations is one thing. But essentially, the bands that I've managed to place in things have the feeling that it's free money. They've already made this track. It's already completed. It's already mixed and mastered, and it's out there. People are seeing it, and they're getting money for it. Oh my God! This is the holy grail to them, and that's great if you're then going to capitalise on that publicity that you're getting. And if, like Leslie said, if the brand is working well with the artist, if it is a good marriage, a good partnership, then it can be brilliant. But they've still got to do something with that, because they will not get another sync for a while because they've had one with it. They're then associated with that brand or with that product, which kind of puts them out the running for either a duration of time or in a certain territory or with association with a certain brand or genre or product type. So it can sometimes be a double-edged sword. So when you do get a sync, make the most of that publicity and popularity while you can, and then but whether or not it replaces touring, obviously touring for bands can be very expensive if you've got 5 guys and all your equipment and you're going up and down the UK or trying to get to Europe, and flights and venues and ticket sales and merchandise. It can be really pricey. So in their heads, I think a sync still gets you in front of as many people, but with none of that outlay of cost.
I don't know if I entirely agree with that. Only in the sense that, I don't believe that brands should be giving people like that false hope in saying, oh, you might be used, you might not be used. I think that's unfair to the artist, because the brands, they need to support music, and if they're willing to pay for music, then they're willing to support the music that they're paying for. And I think that's where they should choose a band that's just developing. I guess it goes back to the A&R thing that you were just talking about, where they could choose like a budding, emerging band and work with them and build up the relationship with them so that it does gel and it does work from the very beginning. And I think that almost brands and agencies should be looking at bands as a form of A&R, because almost sometimes the big record labels get in the way in terms of licensing, paperwork, that kind of stuff, where what you want to do is just take an artist and give them a platform, give them an opportunity to kind of rise. And I think that's what we should be focusing more on, rather than giving them, choosing between 10 artists.
Yeah, I mean, it seems the way things are going. I mean, obviously, within agencies and within brands, departments are very much siloed. So you've got marketing, you've got sales, but it seems to be the way that it would be much more valuable to have more people working in kind of cross-silo nature who deal with music within brands, who can actually kind of leverage the artist. Okay, so we'll think about it much more long-term rather than, okay, we're going to pay 200 grand for a sync for 6 months. Well, how about more of a long-term relationship with the artist that works across all the different departments, and how that can be integrated? And I think there are a few brands doing that now, but more and more, I think that will start to happen.
Hopefully there's a trend that will come up, because what we're seeing just now is people jumping on a bandwagon. And whether or not it's coming to us for composed music or coming to us to try and source a sound-alike of some description, we've got this Imagine Dragons track that's been on this advert, now suddenly everyone wants to sound exactly like that. Or we've had this kind of folk singer-songwriter track on an Apple advert, so now everyone wants their track to sound like that. And you think, well, why? Does it suit your brand? No. Then why do it? What's the point? And it's this kind of jumping on a popular bandwagon is not very creatively fulfilling for us all. So it'd be nicer if, like Sarah suggests, that the brands that are wanting to spend pick an artist that they really see a value in and grow with that, because that's the ideal world. We'd all love it to be like that.
That's, yeah, I totally agree with that. It's, people have got this imagination, yeah, okay, rudimental, that kind of music, that's what's in the charts at the moment. Everybody's listening to that. I want a rudimental track to be featuring on my TV advert. And then you see the TV advert and you're like, hang on, this does not work at all. Why did you choose that kind of genre of music? That does not suit that visuals at all. This comes in where people's personal taste needs to go and sit in the corner over there and just stay there and actually think what works with your product. People can get that wrong so easily, and it's constantly, we need to go back, like with our marketing people, say, why do you want this song? Do you really think the song works with the visuals? Have you actually listened to the lyrics that this person is singing in the song? Like, it's all those kind of things. It's like, oh, no, I didn't realize that. Yeah, okay, yeah. How about this one? It's just totally, let's say, from pop to a classic song, and then all of a sudden, it's like, hang on, this works so much better. So, yeah, I totally agree with you on that point. Yeah.
And I mean, Jim, with BT Sport, do you feel that there have been any examples where you've really helped leverage kind of some of the artists that you've ended up using, sort of push their career forward for a particular use of their music or anything like that?
I can't think of any specific examples of specific tracks, but when we do work with artists, we try and align syncs with other ways that they can get involved with the channels. So if a band's got a new album coming out, we'll get behind the album at sync, and then around the window of release, we'll ask them if they want to come in and do a live session. Yep. Maybe we'll take them to a football ground for the team that they support. We'll do a news story on that. They can pick the soundtrack to one of our other shows where it's kind of goals, montages and that. Great. So we try and put a whole sort of suite of opportunities around these releases, just to, I mean, adds value to the sync, and you know, we're trying to grow reciprocal relationships with rights holders. So at some point when they do have a new, you know, a massive new release, they'll come to us before another broadcaster to get behind it.
Brilliant, yeah. Well, it's all about kind of content creation kind of around it, as you say. Like you could go to a sports ground and film them, you know, performance there or whatever. It's just sort of thinking in a bit more of a non-linear way about how to kind of, you know, exploit the music for the artist, really, I think.
We're trying to drive deeper engagement with our content. So we've got your sports fans at home, they're watching the show, and we tag all of the tracks that are used in BT Sport. We've got an on-screen track ID, and then there's a tweet that goes out with that at the same time. So you can sit there watching BT Sport and see what the soundtrack is on your tablet or whatever, and then in those tweets there's a link through to Spotify where you can go and follow the artist. So as well as the artist getting a bit of promo out of it, we're also encouraging our viewers to, you know, to participate in what BT Sport is doing, to follow through to our website, and to, you know, to get a bit more of a dialogue going between the content and the people at home, and hopefully that keeps artists happy as well as our viewers.
That's really interesting to know, yeah. I think, I mean, looking at the sort of revenues that are coming from Sync for artists, I mean, they have been increasing. I think there's been globally a slight decrease this year, but it's very hard to sort of accurately tell these numbers in terms of global revenue from Sync. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think? I mean, as the media channels fragment more and more, so you know, it's obviously not just TV. We've got the internet, we've got games, we've got apps, we've got all different types of places where potentially copyright can be placed. How do you think that's going to affect revenues? I mean, it would make sense that revenues would increase, but is there a chance that maybe there's just too much fragmentation and too many different platforms now for? What do you think?
I think sometimes the problem comes from being able to quantify the platforms. It used to be, things were very traditional. You have these channels with this number of kind of viewers, or you could have really reliable stats that allowed people like us and the artists and the rights holders to negotiate something, because we could kind of figure out roughly how many people will be viewing it, for how long, and which territories. But now it seems like the way people consume music or consume this kind of content has changed so much that it's not like we've not really caught up fully with how we can correctly quantify certain things. So if we're doing a UK TV advert, we know roughly what ballpark we would want the sync for. US, we know what ballpark. When things are thrown that it's like, oh, well, it's a corporate usage or a promo that's only going to be online, you kind of have to look on the wider picture and try and pluck something from your air. And if you're getting a quote from a rights holder for that kind of usage, and they go, well, what do you think it should be? And you go, I don't really know. It's that kind of, well, what have they got? And so it's difficult sometimes to have a ballpark figure to work in, purely because you don't know until it's out there if it's going to go viral, if it's going to be really well appreciated, if lots of people are going to view it, if it's just a YouTube only thing. Yeah. There's no way of knowing, and you want to get a really good fee for the artist, upfront fee and some kind of residual royalties. And if it's just a YouTube only, then you can't really rely on that, and it's a very grey area than I think it used to be.
I think you're right. I think it's much harder to quantify where all this usage is going and how much money is actually being made for them. Say 10 years ago, it was a lot more easy to say, okay, well, it's mainly like, radio, TV, royalties coming in, and to be able to quantify that. But there's so much more now. And in terms of like, say, maybe looking more towards, for example, advertising, the difference now between, or not just advertising, but games as well, broadcast even, but the difference between digital budgets and, say, television budgets. I mean, on a bespoke level, original composition level, but also on a sync level. How far off do you think we are before the digital budgets kind of match up to the TV? Are they kind of shrinking together slowly, or?
I think that YouTube, especially in the States, are putting a lot of pressure on people to pay royalties for the music that is being played. And at the moment in the UK, it's only Cobalt, I think, that can collect royalties on YouTube. Yeah. And so at this stage where we are, it's difficult to say, because when you put something on TV, there's going to be a massive outright budget, because people have the budgets. You can't really quantify it at that stage. You don't count views. You don't do that kind of thing. Whereas online, digital, that kind of thing, it's always going to be an after, because you've got to count the views and you've got to earn the royalties from that. So until we've really got the system worked out, so that YouTube pay the royalties and everyone pays the fair royalties that they should be, it's always going to be a grey area, and no one's really going to be earning what they should be, or what they are for TV, because it doesn't match up yet.
But yeah, Jim, we were talking to yourself earlier about the was it the Toyota case, and the sort of the six-figure sync deal that they did for a purely digital campaign, which I think that's quite groundbreaking, really, isn't it, in terms of,
Yeah, I think digital revenues, like as traditional revenue streams fall away, so that might be physical sales, etc. We're in a sort of transitionary phase. Physical sales, music consumption is moving from the traditional towards the digital. I think the same thing is happening at Sync as well. So the Toyota campaign that we were talking about earlier, this is exclusively digital campaign that they did through BMG Chrysalis. So they licensed 5 or 6 tracks, and it was what was described as a landmark 6-figure sum. And BMG Chrysalis made quite a big deal out of it, and rightly so, because 3-4 years ago you might have added on digital rights or YouTube rights just as a sort of bolt-on to your print or TV budget, and now it's a 6-figure budget in its own right. So
definitely.
It seems fair enough to me. YouTube is the,
and hopefully there'll be less and less excuse for the clients to sort of say, oh, and we also need digital as well, and here's £5 or something. But yeah, so I mean, just changing the topic slightly and looking about potentially how kind of bands and artist management companies may sort of look to hopefully get involved in sync as a revenue stream. Do you think that it's easier now than ever for artists and management companies and independent publishers and rights holders to access the decision makers when it comes to sync and music supervision? Or do you think it's still kind of like this hidden...
I think there's a problem because of exactly that. Because we're all able to sit and, without even picking up the phone or without putting a CD into the CD player, which is how we used to do it, let's face it, we can now sit in front of our computers and within 10 minutes be keyword searching on Spotify, be going on SoundCloud, and we have to then wade through large amounts of content. So it's great from the artist side because they can easily get their content in the place where we would view it, but because everyone can do that, we're then having to wade through it to get to the kind of content we want. And that's where the difficulty comes because, you know, what we are doing is always really time dependent and that's when I think, like Sarah said, kind of having the Rolodex of people, your kind of go-to people for certain things, that's the next stage that you kind of want to get to because a lot of the time we don't have the luxury where we can spend an afternoon nicely sitting through SoundCloud and enjoying stuff. We have to go to, right, who does this style? Okay, right, who can I count on? Who's got all their stuff together and can clear it fast? Right, okay, it narrows it down immediately.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's the issue because of that kind of, you know, way of being able to get in front of folk.
I think for an artist manager or independent publisher or record label and stuff like, it's very important to, well, first of all, get in contact with, let's say, Jim, and ask him, is there anything coming up? What is your projects you're going to be working, or what kind of music are you guys going to be looking for? Instead of just sending him death metal, and it's for a kids' TV program. I mean, I'm immediately going to say, no, sorry, to put it there, and I'm going to forget about it. Ask the music licensing person, what are you guys working on? What kind of genre of music do you guys want? And send them that genre of music that they're looking for. Don't send them everything. You can, in the side note, say, our strongest catalogue is epic music. Lord of the Rings, this is the battle of all battles kind of music. This is what we specialize in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would advise to find out what they are working on, what kind of music are they looking for. Simple thing is, go and look at that, go and look at somebody's YouTube channel and look at all the videos that they've placed over the last couple of months of this year. It's going to be a very good indication of what kind of genre of music they are using on their videos at the moment, and that will normally stick for a couple of months before it changes to something new.
Yeah, and I think that's really good advice. And I think, obviously, with Jim and yourself, it's more long form. You obviously have some kind of long-term structure to the products or the programs that are coming out. With advertising, it's like instantly reactive. So, you know, the advice that I would give people approaching, say, supervisors like ourselves, is kind of say, well, are there any areas where you don't have it, which you don't have a great supply of? Like, are you particularly weak in terms of people providing you with up-and-coming electronic music, or is it classical music that you need? Or I think, you know, because, for example, you know, we've got great relationships with loads of indie labels and classical labels, but maybe not so much with the sort of like underground electronic labels and that kind of thing. So I think that's a bit of advice in terms of advertising. And moving on to sort of trends within sync, which is always quite an interesting one. In terms of, have you noticed any particular trends this year in sort of sync, would you say?
I'm really happy that the trend of a female vocal artist covering an old classic song is finally starting to die out. And I don't know, there's been a few cool adverts out this year actually that I can't think of one offhand, but that have used like warp artists, like the Apple advert that came out with the new MacBook Pro, and it used a warp artist, and I was like, this is, yes, so good when people are finally using good artists that are, sorry, that sounded biased. But yeah, it's nice when people look outside the box a bit.
Yeah.
The whoa 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 trend has got to die at some point, isn't it? This is an instrumental track in a mobile phone advert set in any kind of European-looking city with boys and girls on fixies, kind of going down drinking coffee. Instrumental, but it goes whoa 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 in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, how many more of those are we going to have to?
Yeah, and I'm
sit
quite glad
through?
that the kind of hand claps and ukulele trend has seemed to have died out.
Thank God for that. It seems like that's all we get. Even the composed tracks we get asked for, you know, they've maybe got a reference track, which a lot of the time, you know, we are brought on because they can't afford to have the sync for the track they really want, and it's always hand claps, folky, ukulele, melodica, and then you're like, please, enough. And it's again, that's this kind of jumping on the bandwagon of a trend which doesn't fit with your product and doesn't fit with the market that you're advertising your product to, and trying to turn somebody's head round from that, because that's all they see on TV, and they're like, yeah, well, that's exactly why you don't want it, come on. So I'm really glad that is. Yeah, and as for any more Christmas stuff with a female singer-songwriter doing a nice, cool, I'm please praying that it doesn't hit us this year. It'd be nice if we could avoid that.
It feels like the EDM trend is quite big at the moment. So this is young people at a festival, mobile phones in the air, DJ in a hat punching the air.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously this is a massive, you know, popular culture, but that kind of thing being employed by brands to sell their products, where they're basically saying, here's the lifestyle that you get that comes with this mobile phone or this app or whatever, here's the music that comes with it. It's very cynical and ugly.
Yeah, there's always a bit of a time lag, I think, between the sort of the trends actually sort of coming through and what's kind of really kind of potentially new and cutting in the music industry. But I think, I remember during the credit crunch, I mean, it was all because the big brands, they really wanted to be perceived as kind of being humble and, you know, in this problem together with everyone else. So, I mean, it was all very small music, it was all very organic, it was all very handmade, and that was a real trend, and that's definitely changed now as we're moving out of that economically, and I've noticed like it's a lot more high impact, epic stuff coming through, and the EDM thing links to it, but also orchestral and that sort of thing. But it does come in trends, it does come in cycles, and it is something to think about potentially when maybe looking at harvesting a publishing catalogue or that sort of thing.
I think it's funny when Laslie mentioned earlier about having to kind of put, if you're an artist or a manager, taking your own personal taste out of the equation is so important, and it's very difficult to do if you are managing a band or if you're part of that band, because if you're approaching any of us or sending or submitting your music for the hope that it will be picked for sync, you've really got to stand back from it and think, well, would somebody pick this? Is it suitable? Is it, the kind of music that you can see synced up to a montage of sports success stories, or would it suit a really nice kind of quirky little technology-based advert? Or you have to kind of have an idea in your head of, hopefully it lends itself well to something, so that when one of us listens to it, we go, that totally works with that style, or we could place this here. Because a lot of the time you get sent really nice tracks and you go, that's great, but it's not very commercial, it's not very sellable, it's not, it's not got a nice wee 30-second segment of it that gives me the melody really quickly, at least twice, that I could easily place on something.
Yeah.
It's just a nice tune, but I can't do anything with it. And that's really frustrating.
One thing I've noticed, which is quite interesting, is quite a good place to start looking at the beginning of trends, is actually sample companies who make samples for people to make music with, because they have to be very early with the trend. So maybe, like, for example, trap, he's getting quite big at the moment with producers, and has been for a while. So you kind of look to maybe the companies that are making the samples for the people that then make the music eventually, and then it's quite an interesting kind of trend forecasting thing.
Sorry, I just wanted to say something. I know we're all talking about new music and composing new music, but there's still a lot of old music there. There's a back catalogue of music out there that people seem to forget about, that people are not pushing anymore. And I think that's really important, getting an old catalogue up there in the front again, showing people, hey, it might have not been cool back then, but now with all the syncing going on, it is going to work for something. I mean, I don't know, is there any really hardcore gamers today? No, nobody. Okay, cool. There was a game that got released last year called Resistance 3. So the marketing people came to us, and the video is set, it's like Southern America, this train going through a desert, and the houses were demolished. It's like something happened, yes, something happened really bad. And they wanted that really strong Johnny Cash kind of a voice thing. So he said, okay, fine, we can look at this. And obviously what they came to us had their own personal house of Johnny Cash. This is what we want. We want Johnny Cash. This is it. And we looked at him, he's like, yeah, do you have £1 million? It's like, no, you're not going to get him. They are really finicky to what they license to. So we said, okay, come, we're going to have a look at something. We went back to that music, and we found the Staple Singers. I don't know, some of you guys might know who the Staple Singers are. And we approached them and we said, we've got this budget, we want to use it for this, are you guys interested? And they said, yeah, sure, let's have a look at it. And we synced it, and the video got so many hits. I think it was one of the fastest YouTube gaming hits on YouTube that back then, a couple of years ago, that everybody's asking, who's this? Because it's a new audience, it's a new age, it's people between age range of 20 upwards to 30 that didn't know who the Staple Singers were. They had no idea, but they heard the song and they worked so well with the visuals, they wanted, where can we download this, where can we download? The record company sent us an email saying a big thank you. They've had to re-release the single because there was such a high demand on it that they reprinted it for the shops, not just digitally. So I think it's really important. If there's people here that's got an old catalog, push it. Not just new stuff, old stuff works as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd agree. I mean, we did one of the biggest jobs that we ever did was the Adidas House Party advert, and that was Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, the Peluski re-edit of Begging, and that was literally just found that on a blog. He just did a re-edit of the Begging track, and obviously that launched that track massively, and that's quite a big reference now. People are kind of like, have you got like a forgotten gem, something like, you know, that kind of thing. So definitely it's good to bear in mind for catalogue.
Yeah, sorry, the point I want to make, it's one sync. That one sync deal is going to make a major difference. That one sync deal is not going to be the $1 million payday baby deal. But that's going to have a chain that's going to affect that song for another 4 months, another 5 months, where people are going to go and download the song. And they're going to go, and it's opened that genre of music to a new audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going to look at re-recordings again. I know you mentioned like this kind of horrible trend of. but I mean, re-records are quite interesting, and when it comes to purchasing music for sync, how because obviously a good re-record can significantly cut the budget in terms of how much you have to pay. How much would that influence you guys in terms of, do you think actually, like, I mean, is there still a lot of value in a good re-record, do you think?
I hope so, because we're doing one just now. Yeah, we get essentially through our film work and through some of the advertising, a lot of people don't realise how much a track will cost them. They generally don't know, the kind of rough figures they're thinking about, and they are shocked when they get a quote that comes back, and they don't realise, they can't get their brain round, we need to pay this for the publishing and then the same again for the master? What? But is this not the same thing? And who am I paying this money to? And trying to kind of educate them and justify this massive amount of money is always really difficult. So when you kind of educate them and they go, right, so I can have someone else record me, okay, and that essentially halves my cost, and then, yeah, you do get asked to do things, and we like to think, although we don't do a lot of them, because we always try and say, no, if you're going to spend the money, spend the full money, and just get the master. If you're in love with it, just have it. But for those clients that generally don't have the money in the pot for it, we like to make the time and effort purely because, we have this responsibility of making the best product we can, and we'll go and source original players that have been on things, and to the ridiculous amount of geekiness, because we all generally have this this untouchable golden glow around the original. And we did a Beatles track once for a US advertising campaign,
Wow.
which was nerve-wracking because you're like, it's the Beatles. You know, nobody touches that.
Yeah, I thought they were
but
unsinkable.
Exactly, it's unspoken. But the good thing was they wanted, at that time, it was very popular, the kind of, okay, we want a slightly different slant on it. So we're like, okay, well, in that case, we feel okay about doing a re-record of it. But I'm hoping that there'll still be, there'll still be a need for it, but I'm hoping more people will make the leap and either pay the full whack for the right product, or say, right, well, we can't afford that, so let's go in a different direction, rather than essentially a halfway house, which is how I kind of view a re-record. It sounds like it's a halfway house.
Interestingly, I heard Sigur Rós once say that their music's been like ruined by, it's been overexploited on TV because of the blanket license and the fact that, I don't know, various television companies can overuse music. Do you think there's any danger of, like, high-profile artists, people like Sigur Rós? I don't know. Do you think that's a reality, that people just kind of get sickened by the amount of times their music's necessarily played on TV?
I think so. I mean, I think it was when Sigur Rós, at least we can all think, well, that's really nice music, and yeah, we've heard it, and it's been done to death, to the point where they actually have a really nice blog of sound-alikes that they have found in source, and people send them links to and say, oh my god, were you on this? Like, no, it's not us, it's somebody that's couldn't afford us. But the blanket license allows, it's left, right and centre, it's all over the BBC, so we hear it consistently. But I mean, perfect example, James Blunt, You're Beautiful, sickened very quickly and has had a massive backlash on the artist, purely because it was a one song that was overplayed. And although he had, at that point, a one album, relatively good catalogue, I was working at the label at the time when that was released. I genuinely really like it. But now, I can't listen to it because it's been everywhere. And I think that, that kind of overplay is really detrimental, but once it's out there, you can't really stop it. You can't grab the running train. I think it's difficult because, again, it just reflects badly on the artist, and they then can't show their head for months.
Surely that's sort of down to the music supervisors. They should have some sort of responsibility to be original, I guess. But I
mean, all artists and publishers are able to opt out of blanket licensing. Right. So Sigur Rós at any point could have picked up the phone to the BBC and said, "Okay, that's enough now. That's enough." So it's not just because the license there, and places like the BBC or broadcasters in general should take more responsibility to police their creatives and make sure that anything that's being used on the channel isn't being rinsed. But then at the same time, like I say, publishers and artists can do the same. So actually, stop that now.
Enough money.
But then you're saying no to the royalties that come with it as well.
You're saying no to the royalties.
Yeah, I suppose the artist needs to decide, okay, am I happy with my song being played over that product, or am I a vegetarian and I don't want Morrison's or this place to play my music over or this ad. It's going to come down to them. They need to say, okay, yes, we can use it for this, but we can't use it for that. So,
and the Sigur Rós example is interesting because everyone, whether you work in TV and music licensing or whether you're just a TV fan, at least in the UK, knows that was overused or that sound was overused. But actually it turned Sigur Rós into a kind of fringe, kind of quirky sort of left of centre indie band into an international kind of concern. It did make their career to an extent.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's not to say that they weren't already going places.
No, absolutely. I mean, one of the best examples of music supervision, in my opinion, recently has been the Olympics, actually, and some of the music chosen for that was just really, really underground and just kind of really left of centre. Bands like Fuck Buttons, for example. I just thought that was really, really well done. But we're sort of getting there, really, with the time. I think maybe we'll just have a quick summary from everyone, just a top line in terms of like advice, maybe of best ways to get your music if you are a rights holder or an artist or management, get your artists in front of the right people. Just a really top line, maybe starting with yourself, Sarah. What would you say?
I would say, just make sure that you're allowing people to hear it. Like that sounds like the most stupid thing to say in the world, but it's kind of like if you're a writer, then you've got to start writing. Like don't just sit there and say, oh, I've done this brilliant thing. Send it out to people. Send it out to the music supervisors. Send it out to the TV production companies, and just let people know that you're making music that's relevant for what they're doing, and it would sound good and without being annoying.
Yeah. It's that thing of being sort of visible without being stalkerish. Yeah. That's the key.
It's finding a steady balance, but I think that's what I would say.
One of my biggest advices is make sure your house is in order. If I come to you, you're pitching something to me, and I ask you, okay, who's the publisher, who's the label, and you come back to, oh, this guy's at the label, but I don't know who the publishing is, then I'm going to go like, okay, I sort of need an answer now. Yeah, make sure your house is in order. Know exactly, if I'm going to clear the song with you, if you're going to send the song to me for sync, be able to tell me, if I'm going to ask you, who's the publisher, who's the record label, who do I need to contact to clear this track, quick and easy. You need to be able to tell me straight away. And get to know the people that you're sending your music to on a personal level as well. Meet them, go and have a drink together. You guys don't have to talk about music all the time. Get to know the person and build a relationship.
Yeah, well, just to echo Leslie's points, if you are published or unpublished, make sure your copyrights are registered with your local collecting society. In the UK, PRS. If you have masters that are yours, register with PPL. That will mean you can. They can be used under TV blankets. Pursue record labels to get your stuff signed. Pursue publishers to get your stuff signed. Pursue music supervisors and ask them to represent your stuff. But if none of that stuff happens for you, it's not the end. There are lots of companies emerging, certainly in the UK now, that will represent your rights to broadcast and TV. Centric, for example, who have a little library called Mass Tracks. Music dealers, Extreme Music and MTV have a little company called Hype. They represent unsigned bands without record deals and record labels, and they'll pitch your stuff to idiots like us, and you share in those royalties. So if you can't get a deal, look for the other alternatives. There are lots out there.
And the only thing I'd kind of maybe add to that is, short on what I'd said earlier about really trying to take your personal preference hat off and look at your music objectively and try and figure out what it could be used for. Go and look at the supervisors who are working with that exact style and send the best tracks, the creme de la creme. Don't send their entire catalogue, send your 5 top tracks so that we have a quick listen to the first 30 seconds of each and go, yep, okay, great. And as Leslie had said, make sure your house is in order. Have all of your lyric sheets in case we need clearance on lyrics, or if we're doing a keyword search on certain lyrics. For adverts, we get asked for that a lot. And make sure that you've got all of your registrations done, all your copyrights done, that you can clear a track. If we phone you up, in 5-10 minutes, you can say, yep, this is all cleared with the publishers, with any of the people who are holding any of the rights. And please, for the love of God, get instrumental versions of your tracks. When you are getting your album mixed and getting it mastered, take the time and get an instrumental version, because there is so many times it's frustrating for us. We find a track that's perfect and the lyrics come in right over the voiceover for whatever it is in the advert, and that's that track, it's gone, we can't use it, and you don't have an instrumental. So please, if you remember one thing, do that, because it's so annoying. It's so annoying.
Tag your MP3s as well. If you send out MP3s, tag them to death. Yeah. Put something in every single field. Yeah. Sounds obvious, but I get stuff from major record labels and publishers that it's called untitled in the track, and that's it. And it goes into our music library and it's gone forever. Forget about it. So obvious, but lots of people don't do it.
Can I add something in that I forgot to say? Just be creative, because we're speaking up here as if we're music supervisors. It's the be all and end all, and if we hear the music, then that's fine. But actually, if you do the creative things and you make the good music and you release it to the world on the internet, like there's so many sources now that just mean that the world will hear it if it's amazing. Like if you're making good stuff, then it will get to the right people, and I think that's probably the main
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I know we need to wrap things up, but in terms of how, how you like to receive music, I know there's a lot of labels still sending CDs, and I mean, actually, in a weird way, I think it's actually for us, it grabs our attention more if it's a bit of vinyl, because suddenly it's like, oh, okay, there's some vinyl here, and we may actually listen to it. Like, I don't know, how do you guys like to receive your music? Is there any particular, way?
MP3s with tags. Don't send me anything physical, because I don't have room to store it anywhere.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
And yeah, I can't remember who said it, but yeah, don't send like entire albums yet. Send like your top 3 tracks. A little bit of context.
Cool.
That's okay.
Great. Okay. Well, I don't know if there are any questions, but we'll throw it out to the audience. Has anyone got any questions at all for us? We've got a couple of minutes to run over things. No. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Cheers.